Hey, welcome to another episode of The Wireless Way. I'm your host, Chris Whitaker. And like I said, the month of January 2026, we're cranking out some great conversations. And today's no different. I'm grateful that you're here. I know you got a lot you could be doing. We're going to make good use of your time today. We're going to cover some really cool, interesting topics. And I think we're going to wrap on one, that is relevant to all of us in some form or fashions. To kick it off, I want to introduce you to Rex A. Davis. He's my guest today. A little bit about him. Combat veteran, leader, pastor, author of Freefall, Life Lessons That Caught Me When the Parachute Didn't. And you guys, if you know me, spent some time in Airborne Unit, 82nd Airborne, and fortunately I saw one or two guys, the parachute didn't work and didn't always work out well. And I'm looking forward to talking to Rex about his book. He served 22 years on active duty in the U.S. Army, Lieutenant Colonel, including combat service in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And we got that in common. That doesn't happen very often, by the way. I usually have too many guests that have that in common. Earning the Bronze Star, completing Airborne, Air Assault, and Ranger School. Again, these are not for the faint-hearted, right? Talking about the real 1% club. Love that. After the military, Rex led in commercial construction. Currently spending 10 years in full-time ministry, guiding people through leadership, faith, and life's hardest transitions. Life's full of those. Across war, work, and ministry, Rex has dedicated his life to developing others and living out his belief that legacy is not what you leave for someone, it's what you leave in someone. Boy, powerful words. To a self-described country as cornbread, Rex. That sounds pretty deep, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you for your service to the country. And this is going to be a great time. Anytime you have a veteran talking to another veteran, there's probably some things that are going to come up that weren't scripted, so to speak. Not that any of it's scripted, but we're going to have a good time. But thanks for having me on today.
That's right. I do love when I can talk to someone, we have a common road we traveled. Speaking of common roads, I mean, first and foremost, my first question I love to ask everybody, so we got your bio, we have what's on the back of the book, but what's not the bio? What can you share that maybe someone doesn't know about you or it's not your bio?
That is a great question because I really have not, you kind of caught me off guard with that one right off the bat. I'm like, wow, what's not in the bio? You said all this stuff. Well, here's what's not in the bio. I actually grew up across the street from Elvis Presley. I grew up right across from Graceland, which is kind of cool when you think about it. But I always say this, the Graceland side of the street was a lot different than my side of the street, Chris. Graceland was this 12-acre wonderland with motorcycles and pink Cadillacs going in and out of the gate all the time. And I lived in a very small travel trailer in a mobile home park with my single mother. So life on our side of the street was a little bit different, but it is kind of a cool fact.
Wow, that is a cool fact. That would win in most of those. So, did you ever see Elvis riding a horse? I heard stories about how he would ride his horse, and like kids would be at the fence, and he'd go up and talk to him. Is there any truth to that?
I think that is true. To be honest about it, what I remember about that phase in my life, we were just trying to make ends meet. And in all honesty, everybody knew who Elvis was. He was in arguably the height of his rising popularity, but we weren't worried about what was going on at Graceland, man. We were we were a good day for me was when my mother had enough spare change to take me down to the street to a place called the Gridiron Cafe and buy me a grilled cheese sandwich. Brother, that was money, and I thought we had hit it big. So I wasn't worried about what Elvis was doing.
That's fair. That's fair, man. What a great story. God, that's fantastic. Going from that even, I mean, you seem to, you made it work for you. I mean, you 21 years, almost 22 years in the Army. Yeah, as a 10-year veteran myself, and that's a whole other story there. But that'll be part two of the conversation another time. But I'm curious, favorite unit, favorite duty station. I mean, what do you look back on that era?
Wow, that, Chris, is a great question because you're going to get me in trouble when you start singling out units that were your favorite. You know the deal.
Well,
The
you're out
unit,
now. I mean, come on.
unit that you're in at the time. You know what we used to say?
Oh, yeah.
We used to have the running joke. What's the worst unit? The one I just came from. What's the best unit? The one I'm in now.
Yes.
Well, for me, there were no bad units. I have a lot of fond memories of the 25th Infantry Division. That was my first unit. That is the Army's presence, as you know, in the Pacific. And for a young kid from Arkansas, I actually, even though I was born in Memphis, I was raised in a small farm town in Arkansas. And so for a small rural farm kid to go from Arkansas to Hawaii, and then that unit travels a lot. We went to Korea, Australia, Thailand, Japan, Malaysia. It just taught me how big the world is. And obviously, it was the first time I was away from home for an extended period. And so those relationships have proven to be critical. And matter of fact, several of the lieutenants that I served with in the 25th Infantry Division over 40 years ago, we're still friends today. We go on fishing trips together. We go on snow ski trips. We've got one planned to Alaska this coming September. And so those relationships have lasted 40 years. So 25th ID right out of the gate. That was a great unit. And then I immediately went to Fort Benning, Georgia. That's the unit I commanded in Desert Storm, part of the old 197th Infantry Brigade on Kelly Hill. When you have the privilege to lead soldiers in combat, that's always going to be one of your favorite units and some of your favorite memories. And so those are the two I'd have to say right off the bat: 25th ID and 197th Infantry Brigade Sledgehammer at Fort Benning.
Love it. I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. And my grandfather was a World War II Korean War veteran, and I knew at 12 years old I was going in the infantry. Where did you end up your career? Where was your last duty station?
I actually retired out of Fort Knox right as the Armor Center was getting ready to transition to Fort Benning as part of the Maneuver Center of Excellence. But I finished up at Knox in weapons and research development. Back then, I'm sure you will remember this, the Future Combat System, FCS. We were pouring millions of dollars into what we called network fires. We wanted all of our weapon systems to integrate, to be able to talk to each other. So we were doing a lot of experimentation in battle labs. And so that was my last unit in the Army. They
Wow.
actually tried to get me to retire one day in the green suit and come to work the next day in a civilian suit. And that was extremely tempting. But I just felt like at that point, Chris, I'm like, if I'm going to retire from the Army, let's do something different. Let's go 180 degrees out. And that's how I wound up in commercial construction.
Wow, commercial construction. Yeah, I grew up. My dad was in residential construction. He did a little commercial here and there. A couple of Pizza Huts and that's apartment complexes. That's kind of that multi-dwelling unit thing. So I grew up going out to construction sites all through Auburn, Alabama. I'm a native Georgian, and but did my fair share of time over in the Auburn, Opelika area. Where are you out of now? Remind me.
I am in Birmingham now.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. I love it. Love me some Birmingham. So let's jump to it, man. The title of your book, Freefall. What does that phrase mean to you personally, and why that title?
That is a great question, Chris. And there's a story behind that. Pastor Larry Stockstill out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I had the privilege to go to dinner with him one night several years ago, and I had already written a book 20 years ago, but I didn't know how to land the plane. I picture that. I have a 200-page manuscript that sat in a desk drawer on a thumb drive for 20 years because
Mm,
I knew something was missing. I'm like, there's just something not right about this book. It's got a lot of information in it. It's got a lot of lessons learned in it, but I don't know how to land the plane. And I really struggled with that. So I wound up at dinner one night with Pastor Larry, and he just said, "Tell me about your life." And so I started telling him, and then I told him I had a parachute accident in the Army where, one night I came out of the aircraft, the parachute didn't open, should have killed me, put me in the hospital, broke a lot of bones, all of that. And I'm going through that story and how it really radically transformed my life. And he just listened. And as soon as I was done with the story, he said, "I know what the title of your book is." And I said, "Really? What?" And he said, "Flat on My Back." And he started talking about Rex. Do you know how many people are flat on their back? And whether it's a drug addiction, a financial collapse, a divorce, a loss of a loved one, so many people in this current culture are flat on their back. Well, you've been flat on your back. Help tell the story and help people get up, whatever the situation is. I'm like, Pastor Larry, that's brilliant. Now, I had to tell him later, I didn't call it Flat on My Back because I didn't think it was catchy enough. So that's where we came up with Freefall, because I had this free fall. But the whole concept is when you have a free fall, you wind up flat on your back. So shout out to Pastor Larry Stockstill, who really gave me the whole idea for the book. And it's got his thumbprint on it. I say that to say this. I never took the old manuscript out of the drawer. It's still in the drawer. I still haven't looked at it, Chris. I rewrote the book. Once Pastor Larry and I had that conversation, I rewrote the book from start to finish and gave it a totally new twist just because one person, a mentor in my life, gave me the missing thought. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I was missing. And so the way I wrote the book, even though I tell my story is irrelevant. It's your story, and whoever happens to be reading the book, it's their story that's relevant. And I just use my story to help them unpack their own. And I ask them, hey, what's your free fall? What free fall have you experienced in life? It might not have been a parachute, but I guarantee you, all of us we can relate to that free fall feeling where we're totally out of control, we're out of balance, we know we're getting ready to hit the ground, and sometimes we do hit the ground. Well, how do we get up? I help people with that through the book by helping them evaluate their own experiences.
To take that story further, if you're a traditional airborne unit static line jumper with another, 30 folks, I mean, you're looking around like everybody else has got a parachute. I mean, so you're looking around going, why am I falling faster than that tree line's coming up mighty quick? That is an uncomfortable feeling. I can imagine. I do love where the book's going, but the paratrooper in me still, I got to ask you, is the memory of that moment when you went 1,000, 3,000, 4,000, check canopy? Oh God, there's no canopy. You remember that moment? I mean, what kicked in? Was it fear? Was it training? Did it happen so fast you didn't even remember it? Tell me about it.
Well, those are all great questions, and because you have jumped, you know the process, you know the procedure, you know your training, you know what's supposed to kick in, and what made that particular jump really bad, Chris, was it was a night jump. It was a zero illumination night, so when I had the malfunction, I really couldn't see. I'm like, I know I've got. I thought I had a total just failure to deploy. What happened? Unfortunately, we were jumping both doors of the C-141 that night, and the jump masters just got off sequence, and they put two of us out the opposing doors at the same time,
Yeah.
and we came out, hit underneath the aircraft. Well, the other jumper's parachute fully deployed. My parachute came out of the tray pack and just draped over the top of his. That's what happened. And so I'm actually hanging in the side of his chute. If this is his parachute,
Yeah.
I'm just hanging on the side. And again, it's dark. I can't see. All I know is I've got canopy all around me, and I am desperately fighting to try to get the canopy off of me. And this is in the book. I had my fingers wrapped around the D ring on the reserve, and I'm getting ready to pull the reserve. And this very soft but firm voice says, "Don't do that." Okay, so now, Chris, we really got a problem now. I've got a total malfunction and I'm hearing voices. That's a That's a bad night. But the voice was so firm and so convincing that I'm like, okay, don't do it. Don't pull your reserve. And so now I'm running out of options and I'm beginning to panic because I'm like, okay, you evidently have a total malfunction. There's canopy everywhere. This voice just told you don't pull the reserve. The ground, oh yeah, by the way, is coming very quickly. And I don't know how far I've fallen, but I know I'm running out of time. You used the word before. It's very uncomfortable. It's very disorienting, and it is very, you find yourself in a panic. And so in the darkness, I try to focus on what is happening here. And so after I hear the voice, don't do that, don't pull the reserve. I'm like, you have to see, you have to settle down, you have to see what you're faced with. So I really focused my vision and I began to see in front of me the other jumper's suspension lines. Okay. Going from his harness to his parachute. And if I'm in somebody's chute, which was my first thought, I'm like, oh, I'm in somebody's chute. Well, those suspension lines should be all jangled and tangled. Well, I focus and I'm like, they're not. They're all straight as they can be. And I'm like, wow, I'm not in his chute. I'm on his chute. Well, by the time I figured that out, Chris, we were about 200 feet off the ground and we separated and I burned in the last 200 feet and it broke my back. It broke my hip in two places. The worst thing was it split my pelvic girdle completely apart. That was painful. That's a bad night, my friend. And I
Yeah.
spent 45 days in Baines Jones Army Community Hospital at Fort Polk. And but it's all good news because as a Christian, that was the night and the next 48 hours when they were trying to determine if I was even going to live or not. I had an experience in the hospital where I truly came to grips with who is Jesus Christ? And I was raised in church. I could recite all 66 books of the Bible, all the things. I had the Sunday school perfect attendance badges on my leisure suit back in the 70s. I had
Yeah.
all the stuff. I was the preacher's kid. I was the perfect preacher's kid. But the truth is, I had a bunch of head knowledge about the Bible, but I really don't think I had a relationship with Jesus. And that journey in the hospital in those moments, I had a true experience with a living God and it changed my life forever. And it's in the book. It's in the book.
Wow. And what year was this of the 22 years? What year did this happen? What
That
number?
was halfway through. I entered the service in 1984, and that occurred January 5th, 1995. So I was 11 years in, exactly the halfway point.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to ask, did you ever jump again after that? Or was it like, no, we're done. You're done jumping. I mean,
That's another great question, Chris. I did not jump again. And here's why. The surgeon, 1 year later, the surgeon came in and he said, I know you're a paratrooper. That's what you do. You jump out of aircrafts. I know you love it and it's part of who you are. And he said, I am going to clear you to go back on jump status and continue. But he looked over at this stainless steel, long, cold medical table and he said, I'm going to explain something to you right now. He said, if you drive your pelvic girdle any further apart, he said, I'm telling you, an eighth of an inch, a quarter of an inch, you have one more, not a bad parachute landing fall, just one that drives that girdle apart anymore. He said, I'm going to lay you on that table right there and I'm going to cut you. And he demonstrated it to me. I'm going to cut you from here to here and I'm going to fillet you open and I'm going to go in and I'm going to put pins in here, here, and here. And he said, now, do you understand that? I said, yes, I do. And he said, I'm going to clear you to go back on jump status. I said, I'm good. Based on the explanation,
why would you do that?
I'm like, I had nothing to prove at this point.
That's right. That's true. Now you got one body, one life. That's for sure. Wow. That is a very unique story. I can't say I've talked to someone directly. So I thank you for sharing that, man. That well, and it's true how God uses bad moments in our lives, to help others. I mean, the Bible's full of stories, and your story is just, it could be, just it's another good story.
Yeah.
Um, another I'm gonna pivot one more time into your
Sure.
background, Free Fall, the book, what you just share with us, a big part of the story. I mean, I'm curious too, so gosh, can you believe it? Desert Storm, 35 years ago. I mean,
Wow.
it does seem I'm thinking back when I was a young guy talking to all the Korean War veterans and the Vietnam veterans, and looking at them going, man, those guys are just old, man. They're archaic. They're dinosaurs. Now I'm that guy. It's kind of, yeah, but I'm proud of it. And I feel great. I'm really happy to be here. Looking back on that time, I mean, did that give you a different perspective on life and a purpose? Because I would have been before the parachute accident, right?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
get some perspective and life lessons out of that experience?
Yeah, there again, man, I love these questions, Chris. Really good questions, reflective
Right.
questions, and it's bringing back a lot of good memories. There's two things that immediately jump out to me about that Desert Storm experience. And the first one was what I believed about being an American. At the time that we went over there, as far as we knew from the intelligence, Iraq had the fourth largest army in the world. And we thought that once we decided to cross the line and begin the invasion to get them out of Kuwait, we really thought that the casualty count on both sides was going to be horrendous. We were expecting it to be really, really bad. And
Mhm.
so, I had to evaluate that in my own life. I was 35 years old at the time as a commander, and I thought, hey, are you ready to die? Are you prepared to give your life in service of your country? And the answer for me was yes. I mean, I remember having that conversation with myself one night. Are you ready for this moment? And if it requires your life, are you willing to do that? And it was an unequivocal yes. And it was a great feeling because no one wants to just go out and say, hey, I'm going to die for my country. But when you're willing to do that, and here's the thought that I had, Chris, at that point at 35 years old, I was so in love with America, with our country, and I still am, by the way. Even with all of our dysfunction, our division, our dissension, the current climate that we find ourselves in, this is still the greatest country in the world. And we have opportunities here that are offered nowhere else. Well, I knew that at 35 years old. And so part of the decision for me in those moments leading up to the actual conflict, if your life is required, Rex, are you willing to do that? And I remember saying this: I will willingly give my life so that others may have the same opportunity that I have had these 35 years. I was so grateful for the 35 years at that point that I had had living in a free country. And I feel that way today. It's been 30 years later, and I still feel the same. Well, it's been 35 years later.
35, yeah.
Yeah, it's been 35 years later. I was 31, yeah, as a commander. I'm 66 now. So I was 31, 35 years later, I'm 66. But I still feel the same way, Chris. If my life were required for my country today, I'm willing to give it because I believe in the foundational principles that our country was founded on. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I am so grateful for the people that have invested in me to live my life as part of a community, as part of a larger group that wants to accomplish something. And I'm still willing to give my life for other people to have that chance. And I think it's a wonderful thing. Do I want to die? No. Patton used to say the object is not to die for your country. The object is to make the other guy die for his country. Well, that's what we do as soldiers, but you got to be willing to write that blank check on your own. And so I remember just having that feeling. Hey, you know what? Here's the thought. I was like, my 35 year of 31, I keep saying 35 because of the
Mhm.
parachute accident. At that point, my 31 years of life were so much better, I felt, than people that had lived in other dictatorship countries, authoritarian countries, communist countries, I'm like, I'm willing to give other Americans that chance. I want them to have it. And I still feel that way. So that was the big overarching thought. The second one, I'll bring the answer to a close. The second thought is what a mentor taught me, my battalion commander. I was very competitive back then. I still am. I'm trying to get over it. I think we're all competitive. You better be competitive in this world. But I was so competitive back then that I wanted to be the best at everything. I wanted my unit to be the best. And at that time, my unit was known as the fastest artillery battery in the battalion. We had the top gun, the fastest gun. Our soldiers were just incredible. And I remember having a conversation with my battalion commander, and he just pulled me aside one day because I was complaining about something. And I said, my boys are the best. And he said, I know they are. And he said, and you're arguably one of the best battlefield company level commanders I've ever seen. But then he said this, he said, can I share something with you? I said, sure. And he said, I don't need, there's 3 firing batteries in the artillery battalion. He said, I don't need 1 superstar battery and 2 okay firing batteries. He said, what I really need is 3 solid, good firing batteries. Will you help me do that? And in that moment, I knew he had just reprimanded me very gently. Hey, Rex, do you want to be a superstar or do you want to be a team player? And it changed my outlook on the way I lead in everything I do. I don't want to be a superstar. I want to be part of a good, solid team. And if I can help somebody get better, I want them to do that. And if they can help me get better, I want them to do that for me. That's a long answer to a short question, Chris.
Well, I mean, you are a preacher, so I mean, I can't be too shocked, right? I mean, you're used to talking in 45 to a minute, 60-minute increments. I'm kidding, Rex. No, that was a great answer. And I loved it. Well, and it's funny because my thought, I never really thought much about 2 things. I'm sure there's a second one, but I still look back to the night before we went into Iraq. Sergeant First Class Hatchell pulled the platoon together. And by the way, I was a 11 Charlie. I was a mortarman. So I'm like the little brother of artillery, high angle hell. So we were battalion mortars, 81 millimeters. And he pulled us and said, hey, guys, we're flying in tomorrow. The whole look to your left and look to your right, one of you might not be here. We didn't know that there'd be this massive surrender. We really thought this could be a bloodbath. I mean, all indications were, hey, let's prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And I was 21 years old. So yeah, 10 years younger. And even then, I again, thank goodness I was raised in the church. And I think as a Christian, yeah, you're kind of like going, I want to go to heaven, but I don't want to go tonight. I ain't ready right now. I mean, I'm okay with going. But yeah, so I think I'm curious to know, from that point on, did it kind of change your outlook even on death, your own death? I mean, is that, because you're like, not many people are put in a situation where they go, hey, you might die in the next 24 hours. No one thinks about that. I mean, and some people just really have a hard time with death. But I think if you've had to look it in the face and go, yeah, I'm ready. I mean, I think it changes you. Did it change for you?
Yeah, I think so because it again, in terms of my age, I was 30, 31 in Desert Storm, and you're faced with your own possibility of mortality. And then the parachute accident occurred 4 years later in 95 when I was 35. So I had those 2 really defining moments. You're in combat with the possibility that you may lose your life. And then in all actuality, during the parachute accident, I really thought I was going to die because I didn't know how far I had fallen, Chris. But I thought, and a younger paratrooper had died the year before. And I remember thinking on the way down, they're going to find you just like they did him. You're dead on impact. And so
Yeah.
when you actually survive that, you're so surprised that you actually made it through that. But it does kind of redefine the temporal nature of our life on this earth, man. Any given moment, you and I have said this in different ways. I can walk out to get in my car as soon as we're through with the podcast, and I can have a heart attack on the sidewalk. There's no guarantees in any of this. But here's the exhilarating thing about that: when you settle in with that, that in itself brings a peace about it, because it's like, hey, I'm not in charge of this. I never was. The Bible says that God has numbered our days. Now, I'm not going to do anything stupid to impede the number of those days. I'm going to do the best I can to live with wisdom. But at the end of the day, if you believe this way, God has numbered our days, and He knows the beginning from the end. And I can't do anything to lengthen those days. So the best thing I can do is love Him, honor Him, love people, honor people, support each other. And when my time is up, it's up. And for those of us that are Christians, arguably, it's a better deal. I'm
That's
going
right.
to a really good place. I got to be convinced, Chris. They got fishing, they got golf. I love to eat breakfast. I believe they got Kaneka sausage in heaven. I don't know what it's going to be
We
like.
might be able to find that in the Bible somewhere. I don't know. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but yeah, and I do love all the connections and the relations to just life. Everyone, yeah. I mean, for some reason, Jelly Roll popped in my mind. I don't know if you know the artist Jelly Roll. You
Yeah,
know the tattoos, and
yeah,
he was in jail, drugs, tattooed all up, and obese. And here lately, he's been making the news a lot. He's very he's his faith is on both sleeves and on his
yeah.
forehead, literally probably. But the guy had his many free fall moments, many combat moments, and he's lived to tell about it through the grace of God.
Yeah, he caught a lot of slack for his Grammy comments, but I'm like, hey man, good for you.
That's
Good
right.
for you. Hey, Jesus, I love what he said. Jesus is for everyone. Jesus is not some exclusive person that does not relate to every human being. God created us; He knows all of us, and that's the fascinating thing to me in this divisive environment that we find ourselves in. I'm like, hey, we're all humans made in the image of God, and it makes it a lot easier for me to relate to people that I may not even agree with
Yeah.
politically, morally, or ethically. Doesn't matter. Hey, they're created in the image of God, just like I am, and I empathize with them, whatever challenge, struggle, obstacle they're trying to navigate in their life, because I got some of those too. And if we could support each other and be a little bit more empathetic, regardless of what we look like, you know,
Yeah.
tattoos, ear piercing, whatever it is, hey,
Right. Amen. Amen there, brother. I've talked to a lot of I've interviewed several veterans, and of course, I do some, work as much as I can, with different organizations, taking veterans out on boat rides. There's an organization called Cell Phone for Soldiers that I love that I promote on the podcast, have a commercial for them. But that transition period, I'm gonna pivot again, leaving the military after 20, another good friend of mine got out, about the same time, as a lieutenant colonel. Found he got the call from, DA, you're not going to make the bird list. And I remember having lunch with him 6 months before he got out. He goes, Chris, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. I mean, this is all I know. I came in at 18. I mean, how about you? How did you navigate that transition? Was that difficult, or did you have a better experience?
I think I saw some of the officers that were in front of me retiring, and one in particular who I really admired, respected, and he was just all in. And anybody in uniform should be all in, but
Mhm.
this guy just he lived and breathed the Army. And as I'm saying his name in my mind, there's several others that I can think of, but I saw them retire. And I think they really did have a difficult time, Chris, because I think they got a little bit of their identity as an Army officer mixed up with who they are. And I would caution anybody against that. The moment that we tie our identity to an accomplishment, an achievement, where we work, what we do, that's not who we are. Those are the things that we do. And those are gifts, skills, talents that God has given us. But who we are again, is a divine spirit created in his image. And there's a big difference. So I started noticing that, to answer your question, probably about year 14. And I saw difficulty in transition. And so I started trying to brace for impact, so to speak. I'm like, hey, this thing is probably going to end around 20 years. And you need to start thinking about that and thinking about life after, and being honest with yourself that, hey, there is going to be life after, and it's going to be good. It's going to be unfamiliar because you've been living this life for so long, and there's standards, policies, procedures, all the stuff that comes with the Army life. That is difficult to leave behind because everybody has the same goals. We have the same unit goals. We may have different individual goals, but you know what I'm saying? Like a mission essential task list. We're all on the same sheet, moving in the same direction. And then when you get out in civilian life, well, they're not quite that organized, and they see things a little bit different and a little bit more independently. And that was a difficult transition for me because there's a reason people stay in the Army. They like the Army way. And
Yeah.
it's a reason today that sometimes veterans, when we're doing outreach with veterans, we're trying to teach them new ways of doing things. Well, sometimes they don't want to learn a new way because they've been raised in the Army way, the Marine Corps way, and the Air Force, and
Yeah.
they like that way. And the truth is, that way's not bad, but we need to take the best of those ways and integrate it into whatever new career or job or volunteer organization you might be stepping into, because the truth is they may do things a little bit different.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I tell veterans like, hey, when you're active, when you're, in uniform, one of the most important things is the mission. Of course, your brother and sister on the left and right is, more important than the mission in a lot of ways. You want to get yourself and your buddies home, but the mission is why you're there. And I was like, hey, you just got a new mission. You got
Yeah.
a new mission, and they've issued you a new mission. It's to go be this civilian employee. It's to be this father, this husband, friend. I mean, it's just the missions change, which means sometimes the skills need to change. You have to train for the mission. But well, that's great. Now that's yeah, I think that's I've seen a lot of organizations popping up. I mean, obviously 20 plus years of war on terror. We have a lot of veterans that are still struggling with that transition. And yeah, I'm glad that you and others are we're doing the best we can to help them out. Your quote that I mentioned earlier, legacy is not what you leave for someone, it's what you leave in someone. How did that belief form?
That I'd love to tell you that that's my quote, Chris. I saw that probably 5 years ago on a website. And I think it was a marriage website. Somebody was advertising a marriage conference for their church, and they had this nice looking couple on the picture. And that was the tagline that was on it. And I thought, gosh, that is so good. And so I borrowed it, I stole it, and I
That's
made it
right.
my
But
own.
you gave him credit, so you borrowed it.
And I've gone back years later trying to find that church, that couple, that graphic, nowhere to be found. And so I've seen versions of the quote, but not quite like the one I used. So I adopted it, put it in the book. It's my email tagline, but where it really came from is my dad. And here's part of my story, and this is in the book. I mentioned growing up across from Graceland and being raised by a single mother. Well, my biological father abandoned my mother before I was born, and I hated him. I never met him, but I hated him with a passion because she later got cancer. She died when I was 7, and I knew enough to know that he stayed in touch with some members of the family. And so I knew that he knew that she had cancer, and he never came and checked on her one time. And so there was a hatred that grew in me for years toward a man that I've never seen in my life, and it just festered. Well, I finally got healed from that, but part of the healing was my grandmother's baby sister came to Memphis and adopted me. That's how I wound up in Arkansas. My grandmother's baby sister, my great aunt, was not much older than my mother. Her and her husband came and adopted me. And everything that my biological father was not, my adopted father was. He was godly, he was honorable, he was, I tell people, he wasn't Moses, but Chris, he might as well have been. The dude was just, my gosh, he knew what to say. He just, it was just unbelievable. And his foot, thumbprint, by the way, is in my book. After the book was written, my editor said, you talk about your dad a lot. And she said, he sounds like a really neat person. You ought to write a book about him. And I chuckled and I said, I just did. And so he is
That's awesome.
underneath every story, even though the book's not about him. But my point is, I had one dad, and I've learned to give the biological dad, Buddy's his name. That's the only thing I know about him. I've learned to give Buddy a lot of empathy and a lot of grace because Buddy probably never had a role model. Buddy probably never had a father that taught him any different. Buddy didn't know. He didn't have a role model. He just wasn't taught. Well, it's my job, if I believe what I believe about the Christian faith, is to give him grace. And the truth is, Buddy helped get me here. If he did nothing else right, Buddy helped get me here. And my life has been good. Thank God for Buddy. Now,
Yeah.
but you look at him and he just didn't have a role model or whatever reason he didn't know. And then you take my dad, and my dad just taught me honor, discipline, worthiness, all of these fantastic values. And he's been gone now 10 years. But when I look at his life, I'm an only child. So my dad, he had a farm, he had a house, and my dad left me those things. But that is not the most important thing my dad left me. What my dad left me was godly character, honor, integrity, and you can't replace that. So my dad left a legacy, and it wasn't anything material that he left for me. My dad left a deposit in me. So legacy, it's not what we get that wrong sometimes. We think it's about leaving an estate, leaving a trust, leaving a little bit of money, whatever we've acquired. Hey, let's leave something for someone. That's not the best thing you can do. The best thing we can do for people is not leave something for them, leave something in them, and that's legacy.
Wow, that speaks to me. I mean, my wife and I, 4 kids. We have 3 granddaughters, 2 more grandkids on the way. And you're I think, being a father, and a grandfather now, that speaks to me because it's like, it's not about material things. It's like, what am I doing to, help these little people and even my, adult kids now modeling, the right behavior for them. And that's beautiful, man. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. So if someone's listening and they're like, "Man, this guy's had a life, he's combat, a tough upbringing, parachute fall, but I'm in a free fall. I got my own problems. I've been laid off. My marriage isn't working out. I got money problems. I got health problems." What do you tell them? I mean, other than read the book.
Yeah. Well, I would love for him to read the book because again, the book is written in a way where that's the important thing. I realized, Chris, in telling my story, the reason I couldn't finish the book 20 years ago, I had this fantastic story about this parachute accident, but you tell the story and in 3 minutes it's over and you're like, well, so what? What does that
Why
do
now?
for anybody that listened to the story? And that's been my journey to realize, brother, you got to help people. And so in the book, I ask specific questions. Hey, I tell different stories about the common. I've had some fantastic experiences. I had lunch with Ronald Reagan in the White House when I was 23 years old. It was a phenomenal experience. That's not what changed my life, and it's not even in the book. I didn't write about that. What changed my life? There's a chapter called "The Doghouse." Well, what's the doghouse about? It's about my uncle Bob, who was a free spirit, crazy as he could be, but he took one summer and he helped me build a doghouse. And Uncle Bob and I just spent time together and we laughed. And he taught me how to draw a plan. He taught me how to use the tools. And he died shortly after that. And I was heartbroken again because it was another instance of death in my life. But when I think about Uncle Bob, I'm like, Uncle Bob left a legacy in me because he took those weeks that summer. I was probably 9, 10 years old at the time, and just spending time, an older man with a younger boy, and we built the doghouse together. I wrote a whole chapter on the doghouse. Well, what's it
Wow.
got to do with anybody else? It may not have been a doghouse, but I asked him, hey, what's your moment that you spent with somebody and you
Yeah.
didn't realize that it meant as much to you as it did? And so, what I challenge people is number one, hey, I know it may seem bad today, but it is going to get better. There's always hope. Always move people to the point of hope. And in looking at our own life stories, I know it may be tough. The economy's tough right now. People are struggling with opioids and all these different things that are out there to get caught up in. But when you recognize, hey, I'm in a free fall moment, again, I want to encourage people. There is always hope. There is a God, whether you believe it or not, doesn't make it any less so. There is a God that created you. He's for you. He's got your best interest at heart. He loves you. He cares for you, and he wants the best for you. And that doesn't mean that it alleviates all the pain, the frustration in our life. He's still there. He's for you. And I would encourage you, find a friend, reach out to a local church. I have my website information in the book. Email me. I love to talk to people. Email, phone. These are who would dream years ago, Chris, that we'd be able to engage people on a podcast. This is
Right.
so out of the realm of possibility for us even 20 years ago. And you look at it, somebody right now is listening and they're looking for hope. Hey, let me tell you, God is for you, and it's not just this feel good thing. It's not going to get better overnight. You know that, but hang in there. Help is on the way. And I'm praying for you specifically. If you're one of those people experiencing a free fall right now, I'm going to pray that God puts someone in your path that just reminds you with a touch, with a smile, with a kind word. You're not forgotten. You're not by yourself. God loves you and He's for you.
Amen. I know you appreciate I felt like I was at church for a second there, and I love that. Yeah, God, you can have church anywhere too. I mean, the house of worship is special. Yeah, we just shared some good word there, man. I thank you for that. Yeah, definitely check the show notes. I'll have your link and your information as much as you want me to share. As well as the link to the book. I'd love for y'all to check that out. Man, how awesome. Speaking of landing the plane, you said earlier, like, it's about that time to land the plane. Any last words? Anything else you want to share with us? Any projects you're working on, favorite books or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm always working on something, but since you mentioned books, I love books. The old saying is you will always find yourself in a book. And I have the privilege to preach for a friend of mine up in Cincinnati occasionally. And so it's February. We always think about Valentine's Days and marriage messages for preachers. And so I always love the preparation. So I pull out different books and maybe one that I haven't read before. And so I pulled out recently. My dog is here in the house with me. You just heard her.
So I love dogs.
But Tim Keller, The Meaning of Marriage, as I started reading, and this is a book I've never read before, and I thought, well, let me read a fresh book on marriage. The cool thing about this book is servanthood. It talks about how difficult marriage is because the expectation is that we're selfish people. We know that. The Bible tells us that up front. It says the heart is the most deceitful. Now I know that's not the cultural narrative. People say, "Oh, we're all good. We're all good-hearted." That's not what the Bible says. It says we're evil-hearted, and we got to guard against that. And so part of the thing that helps you guard against that is serve others. And so in a marriage, it's hard because we have to let go of the selfishness and serve our spouse. But Tim Keller makes a great point. That's the essence of the Christian faith because we're all selfish and we want, our way on our agenda to be done. But in these moments, hey, the whole gospel is about serving. people. So, Dakota, can you please be quiet? And she's trying to close my message for me.
It
That's
is.
like music that plays behind the
That's
preacher,
right. That's right.
music that tells you you're done. My dog is telling me I'm done.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. The
The
music's
message
playing.
is servanthood does not just go for marriages. It's the essence of the gospel. Jesus laid his life down for us, and he constantly put his personal agenda aside to serve us. And we should do the same, not just with our spouses, but with other people. Our mission, we talk about mission a lot. What's our mission? I like to boil it down to this: love God, love people, serve people. We can never go wrong serving and putting another human being first.
And not only is that the last word, is the word. So, Rex, man, thanks for your time today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's always good to meet another brother in faith and service and veterans. So, and what a great story, man. I really enjoyed it. Our time together. Thank you.
Well, I did too. Thank you for having me. What a treat. And I look forward when we're able to do this face to face.
You bet. I'll be making a trip over to Birmingham. I love coming over there to the ball game and the city in general. I'll try to get over there at least once a year. So I'll let you know. So there you go, folks. Another episode of The Wireless Way. And man, I don't know how you could have listened to the last 50 minutes and not thought about someone in your life, a friend, colleague, family member. If you didn't, at least I was hoping you're thinking about yourself. But share this episode with them. I hope they can find some guidance and peace in it. And as always, like and subscribe. That always helps the algorithm. And by subscribing, you'll be notified of the new episodes coming. And check out all the others. So I'm again grateful for Rex and grateful for you listening today. And we'll see you next time on The Wireless Way.